The corner of paper caught fire the way that everything my mother touches eventually does, slowly, then all at once, until there's nothing left but ash and the smell of something you can't get back. I found my daughter on her knees in front of the kitchen trash can, both hands buried in coffee grounds and eggshells, tears streaking down cheeks that were still round with baby fat she hadn't quite lost yet. She was 6 years old, searching through garbage like it might give her something back. "Lily, baby, what are you doing?" She didn't look up. Her small fingers kept moving, pushing aside a crushed cereal box, and banana peel gone brown. "My drawings," she said, voice cracking in that particular way children's voices crack when they're trying so hard not to cry that the trying becomes its own kind of crying. I got down on the floor with her, my scrubs still smelling faintly of the pediatric ICU, my shift barely over. "Show me what you're looking for." "The house pictures, all of them. I need them back." Something cold moved through my chest. Lily had been drawing the same house for 8 months, a small brick house with a red door, 3 windows, and a crooked tree beside it, obsessively, almost ritualistically, the way children sometimes fixate on one image until it becomes a kind of language only they understand. She drew it in crayon, in marker, in the margins of her homework. When I asked her once, she'd said simply, "Daddy told me to remember it," and then gone back to coloring like she hadn't just made my whole body go still. I found my mother in the living room, calmly folding a dish towel as if she hadn't just detonated something irreplaceable in my daughter's small world. "Mom, where are Lily's drawings?" She threw them out. She didn't even look up from the towel. "Olivia, that girl had over 200 pieces of paper stuffed under her mattress. It's not healthy, it's clutter. I was helping." Those weren't clutter. They were crayon scribbles of the same ugly house over and over. My mother finally met my eyes, and there was something in her expression I hadn't seen before. Not guilt, quite, but something adjacent to it, something that flickered and then hardened into defensiveness. "I don't understand why you're upset. I was helping you." I walked past her to the fireplace because I could smell it now, the particular acrid sweetness of burned paper. And there, curled black in the grate, among the ashes of my daughter's entire inner world, was a scrap of something that wasn't a child's drawing at all. It was the corner of an envelope, yellowed, old, and even through the char I could make out 3 numbers in handwriting I would have recognized anywhere, in any lifetime, in any world. My husband's handwriting. Daniel had been dead for 2 years. I picked up the burned fragment with hands that had stopped feeling steady, and my mother's face changed in a way I will never forget, the color leaving it all at once, like something had just been switched off behind her eyes. "Mom," I said quietly, "what is this?" For the first time in longer than I could remember, my mother didn't have an answer ready. "Do you understand why a burned scrap of paper could undo me the way it did? You have to understand what Daniel Brooks was to us, and what losing him took. He was a fire captain with Denver Fire Department Station 3, the kind of man who ran into buildings other people were running out of. He met me when I was 26, a new nurse working nights in the burn unit at Children's Hospital, Colorado, and he'd come in with a colleague who'd taken smoke inhalation on a call. He sat in that waiting room for 6 hours, and somewhere around hour 4, he made me laugh so hard I had to step into the supply closet to compose myself. We married 18 months later. Lily came 4 years after that, and for a while, we were the kind of happy that makes other people slightly uncomfortable at dinner parties. Then came the apartment fire on Colfax Avenue, the one that made the news for 2 days, and then, like all tragedies that aren't yours, quietly stopped being anyone else's concern. Daniel went back in for a family that hadn't made it out. He got the children to safety. He didn't get himself to safety. I was called to the hospital where I worked, except this time I wasn't the nurse. I was the widow in the hallway, and everyone who usually reported to me was suddenly speaking to me in the careful, cushioned voice we reserve for people whose world had just ended. Lily was 4. She didn't fully understand death yet, not the permanence of it, but she understood absence, and she understood that her father had gone somewhere he wasn't coming back from. My mother, Diane Foster, moved in 3 weeks after the funeral. She said it was to help me, and for a long time I believed her, because grief makes you generous with your trust in exactly the people who least deserve it. She had never particularly liked Daniel, thought a firefighter's salary was beneath what I could have done, as she'd said more than once at holidays when she'd had enough wine to stop pretending otherwise, but she loved her granddaughter fiercely, or so I believed, and she took over bills, appointments, school pickups while I worked the extra shifts we suddenly needed. I was drowning in grief and gratitude in equal measure, and I didn't notice, not for a long time, how much control she had quietly assumed over things I never should have handed her. Including, as I would soon discover, a small trust fund Daniel had set up for Lily 2 months before he died, naming my mother as co-trustee, because he trusted her. Because he never imagined he wouldn't be there to manage it himself, because good men rarely imagine the worst about the people their wives love. Lily's drawings had started around then. The house, the red door, the tree, always the same, drawn with a focus that unsettled me in ways I couldn't quite articulate at the time. I told myself it was a grief ritual. Children process loss through repetition. I didn't yet know it was a memory. Back in the present, I sat on the edge of Lily's bed that night, long after she'd cried herself into an exhausted, hiccuping sleep, and I turned the burned fragment over in my hands under the lamplight. 3 numbers, 417, charred at the edges but legible. Daniel's handwriting. I'd know it anywhere, that particular slant to his 7s, the way he crossed his 4s like a European. I hadn't shown my mother I'd kept it. I'd slipped it into my scrub pocket while she was still finding her words, and I'd left the room before she could recover them. The next morning, I asked Lily gently over cereal, being careful not to let my voice carry the urgency clawing up my throat. "Baby, can you tell me again what Daddy said about the house pictures? Take your time." Lily considered this with the grave seriousness only 6-year-olds and very old men seem to possess. He said it was our secret game. He said I had to remember the house, the tree, and the numbers on the door, and someday it would be important. She frowned. "I don't remember all the numbers now. Grandma said the pictures were garbage, so I stopped trying so hard." "Do you remember any of the numbers, sweetheart?" 4, she said, and then some more. I used to know all of them, but now I forget parts. My mother appeared in the kitchen doorway at that exact moment, and I watched her posture change, the way certain animals change when they sense a predator nearby, an almost imperceptible tightening, a shift in weight onto the balls of her feet. "What are you two talking about?" "Nothing," I said, and it was the first lie I had ever told my mother, and it tasted like copper in my mouth. She didn't believe me. I could see that she didn't, and 20 minutes later, when I stepped into the hallway to take a work call, I heard her on her cell phone through the thin wall of the pantry, her voice pitched low and urgent in a way I genuinely never heard from her before. "No, she found something. I don't know what. I need you to check the account before—" A pause. "I told you this wouldn't stay buried forever. I told you." I stood frozen in that hallway with my phone still ringing uselessly in my hand, and for the first time in 2 years, I understood that my mother was afraid of me. I just didn't yet understand why. I called Rachel Alvarez the next day. She'd been Daniel's college roommate's sister, and more usefully, an estate attorney with an office off Colorado Boulevard who'd helped us draft our wills years earlier, back when we were young, and it all felt theoretical. "Olivia, it's been a while." Her voice warmed, then sharpened when I told her why I was calling. "Wait, say that again? Your mother is co-trustee on Lily's fund?" "Daniel set it up 2 months before he died. I thought it was just a standard thing, a formality, in case something happened to both of us." "Do you have the trust documents?" I didn't. I'd never asked to see them. grief had made me a passenger in my family's finances, and my mother had been more than happy to keep driving. Rachel went quiet for a moment, the particular quiet of a professional recalculating how bad a situation might actually be. I want you to request a full accounting from the bank, today if you can, not next week, today. It took 3 days and considerably more persistence than I expected before Wells Financial Trust Services would even acknowledge the account existed. And when the statements finally arrived in my email, I sat at my kitchen table at 11 at night with Lily long asleep upstairs, and I felt the floor of my understanding shift beneath me. The trust had been funded with $180,000, Daniel's life insurance payout, meant entirely for Lily's future, her education, her security. In 2 years, it had been drawn down to just under $61,000. Withdrawals, repeated, methodical withdrawals, each one small enough not to trigger automatic review, each one authorized by a single signature. Diane Foster. I set my phone down on the table like it had burned me, which, in a way, it had. I didn't confront her that night. I wanted to, God, I wanted to, walk up that stairs and shake her until the truth fell out of her mouth. But I'd spent enough years in hospital rooms watching families destroy each other with premature accusations to know that evidence mattered more than fury. Instead, I went back to Lily's closet and pulled out the shoebox of drawings she'd kept there before the recent purge. Older sketches from a year ago that had escaped my mother's attention because they'd been stored away rather than under the mattress. I spread nearly 40 of them across the living room floor at midnight, and I studied the house, the tree, the door, searching for the numbers Lily could no longer fully recall. It took me almost 2 hours, but I found it. In an earlier drawing, more detailed than the recent ones, the numbers on the door weren't reduced to a single 4. They were whole. 4172225. A 5-digit number. I knew with the strange clarity that arrives only at 2 a.m. after your entire understanding of your family has cracked open, exactly what I was looking at. It was a safe deposit box number. Daniel's bank. First Highland Trust, the branch off Spear Boulevard, where we'd opened our very first joint account 15 years ago. I called Rachel again in the morning, this time before I had even had coffee. "There's a box," I told her. "Daniel left something in a safe deposit box, and he taught our daughter the number like it was a game in case something happened to him. And I think my mother has known about this whole time." Rachel's silence lasted 3 full seconds. "Olivia, I think you need to sit down for this part because I made a call yesterday after we spoke. Your mother's name is also listed as an authorized signer on that box." "What?" "She's tried to access it, twice, both times within the last 6 months. Both times she was denied because Daniel's instructions specified the box could only be opened in the presence of his named beneficiary or with a court order. Lily's name is on that box, Olivia. Not yours. Hers." I sat down at my kitchen table, my hands pressed flat against the wood grain, and I understood for the first time that my mother hadn't simply been managing grief-numbed finances poorly. She had been trying, methodically, for months to get into something my husband had deliberately locked away from her. And when Lily's drawings had started circling closer and closer to the exact number that would let her in, my mother had panicked and burned the only map my daughter had left. I confronted her that evening in the kitchen with the burned envelope fragment on the table between us, like a piece of evidence in a trial neither of us had agreed to attend. "You've been stealing from Lily's trust," I said. I kept my voice level, the voice I used for delivering hard diagnoses to frightened parents. $119,000, Mom, and you've tried twice to open a safe deposit box that isn't yours? My mother's face went through several expressions in quick succession: shock, calculation, and then finally the wounded indignation she'd always reached for when cornered.
You have no idea what it's been like for me watching you struggle after Daniel died. I was helping this family survive. Do you know what my business has been going through? The bakery has been bleeding money for 2 years, Olivia, and nobody once asked how I was managing. Everyone just assumed Diane will handle it. Diane always handles it. That money wasn't yours to handle. It was Lily's. She's 6. She doesn't need $180,000 right now. And you needed it more than your granddaughter's future? My voice cracked on the last word, and I hated that it did, because I didn't want her to see how deeply this had cut. You burned her drawings, you watched her cry for hours over garbage, and you let her believe she'd lost the last game she ever played with her father, because you were afraid she'd remember a number that would expose you. I didn't know what the drawings meant, my mother said, but it came out too fast, too rehearsed, and we both heard the lie land wrong in the air between us. Yes, you did, I said quietly. You've known for months. That's why you tried to open that safe deposit box twice. Her jaw tightened. When she spoke again, her voice had shifted into something colder, something I recognized from childhood arguments I thought I'd outgrown having to survive. If you push this, Olivia, I will tell every judge in this state that you've been an unstable, overworked single mother barely holding your life together since Daniel died, leaning on me for everything, and that this is nothing but paranoid grief talking. Don't think I won't fight for custody rights if you try to cut me out of that girl's life. The threat hung there, ugly and precise, and for one terrible moment, standing in my own kitchen, I felt something I hadn't felt since the week Daniel died, a bone-deep fear that I might actually lose. For nearly 2 weeks after that, it felt like she had already won. My mother told my aunt and my cousin Grace a carefully edited version of events, that I'd become erratic and accusatory, that grief had finally caught up to me, that she was worried about my mental state. Grace called me, gently, carefully, the way you speak to someone you suspect might be unraveling, and asked if I was doing okay, really, honestly. My aunt stopped answering my texts altogether. I went to work exhausted, came home to a house that felt like a courtroom I hadn't consented to enter, and watched my 6-year-old daughter ask every night if her grandmother was still mad at her for losing the pictures. You didn't lose them, baby, I told her again and again. Grandma took them. That was never your fault. Rachel called on a Tuesday with news that should have felt like relief and instead felt like the floor dropping out from beneath a floor I'd already thought was rock bottom. The bank's compliance department completed their internal review. There's more, Olivia. It's not just withdrawals. There are 2 signatures on transfer authorizations from 8 months ago that don't match your husband's handwriting anywhere else in his file. Someone forged his signature on a beneficiary amendment attempt. It was rejected by the bank's verification system, which is the only reason the trust wasn't fully liquidated. I sat with the phone against my ear in the hospital parking lot after a 12-hour shift, and for a moment I genuinely could not speak. She tried to write herself in as the primary beneficiary, she said quietly. After he died, she tried to redirect the entire trust to herself.
I thought of my mother sitting across from me at dinner 2 nights earlier, talking about how worried she was for my emotional state, and something inside me that had been bending under grief and doubt for 2 weeks finally, quietly, set itself straight. I want the box opened. Whatever Daniel left in there, I want it opened and I want everything documented. And then I want my mother in a room with a lawyer and no more chances to lie her way out of this. The bank required Lily's presence, along with mine and a court-appointed observer, since she was the named minor beneficiary. Rachel arranged it for a Thursday morning I took off work, and I told Lily only that we were going somewhere special that Daddy had planned for her. She held my hand the entire walk from the car to the bank's vault room, her small fingers gripping mine with the same fierce concentration she'd once used to hold on to her crayons. The box, when the manager finally slid it free and set it on the table, was smaller than I had expected.
battered gray metal, unremarkable, the kind of thing you'd walk past 1,000 times without a second glance. Inside was a manila folder of documents, the original trust paperwork, correctly executed, naming Lily as sole beneficiary, and specifying that any attempt to amend the trust required both my signature and a court order, a clause Daniel had apparently added after a conversation he'd had with his own attorney about protecting Lily no matter what happens to either of us. There was also a smaller sealed envelope, the twin of the burned one, with my daughter's name written across the front in handwriting that made my throat close. For Lily, open when you're older or when Mommy says it's time. I looked at Rachel. She nodded. I looked at Lily, who was staring at the envelope with the wide, still attention of a child who somehow, without being told, understood this mattered. Do you want me to read it with you, baby? Lily nodded, and I opened it. Daniel's handwriting filled 2 pages, and I will not share every word of it because some things belong only to a father and his daughter. But I will tell you that he wrote about the drawing game they'd invented together during his last deployment training rotation, before a promotion review had made him briefly, quietly aware of just how much risk his job carried and just how little control he had over guaranteeing he'd always come home. He wrote that he'd made the game so that if anything ever happened to him, some piece of him would still find its way to her, hidden in something only she would remember, something no one else could take from her, because no one else would know to look. He hadn't imagined someone would try to burn it out of her instead. He remembered me, Lily whispered, pressing the letter to her chest. Even before, he was already remembering me. I held my daughter in that quiet vault room and let both of us cry. And for the first time in 2 years, it didn't feel like grief alone. It felt like something had finally been given back. The formal reckoning came 3 weeks later, at a meeting Rachel arranged in her office. My mother, myself, Rachel, and a compliance officer from the bank who'd flown in specifically because forged signatures on a trust document were, as it turned out, considerably more than a family disagreement. They were a matter for the district attorney's office. My mother arrived impeccably, the way she always did for anything she considered a performance, and she sat across the conference table with her chin lifted in practiced defiance. "This is absurd," she said, before anyone had spoken. "I raised money, I paid bills, I kept this family functioning while Olivia fell apart." "Mrs. Foster," the compliance officer said, not unkindly but without hesitation, "we have documentation of 11 unauthorized withdrawals totaling $119,000 and a forged signature on an April amendment request that our verification team flagged as fraudulent. We're required to report this to the district attorney's office. You should have legal representation present for anything beyond this meeting." I watched my mother's face for the collapse I'd been half dreading, half hoping for, and it didn't come easily. She tried denial first, insisting the withdrawals were loans she intended to repay, that the signature discrepancy was a bank error. When Rachel calmly laid the forensic handwriting comparison on the table beside it, she tried negotiation, offering to repay everything immediately if we would simply let this stay a family matter. When I didn't answer fast enough for her liking, she tried the threat again. Quieter this time, about custody, about what a judge might think of an exhausted, widowed mother. "You don't have a case for that anymore, Diane," Rachel said, using my mother's first name, deliberately, professionally, stripping the moment of any remaining familial softness. "You have a fraud investigation. I'd focus on that if I were you." And then, finally, something in my mother's posture broke. Not dramatically, quietly, the way a dam doesn't burst so much as it finally admits water has been coming through for a long time. She put her face in her hands, and when she spoke again, her voice had lost every trace of its rehearsed certainty. "I was drowning. The bakery, the loans, your father's medical bills before he passed. I never meant it to become this much. Every time I told myself it was the last time." She looked up at me, and for one moment I saw not my adversary, but simply an aging woman who had let fear curdle into something she couldn't undo. I burned those drawings because I was terrified of what would happen if she remembered that number. I told myself I was protecting the family. I don't know when that stopped being true.
It wasn't a full confession of everything. She never did admit on the forged signature outright, leaving that battle for the DA's office to eventually settle through a restitution agreement that spared her prison time in exchange for full repayment and a permanent removal from any fiduciary role in Lily's life. But it was enough. Enough truth, finally, after 2 years of careful management and quiet theft, that I could stop bracing for the next lie. The trust was restructured within 2 months, with Rachel now serving as independent trustee until Lily turns 25. My mother repaid what she could liquidate immediately and entered a court-supervised restitution plan for the rest. A slow, humiliating, entirely necessary unwinding of the comfort she'd built on money that was never hers. She doesn't live with us anymore. That part wasn't cruelty. It was simply the truth of what trust requires once it's been broken. It has to be earned back in small, verified pieces, the way you'd test a bridge before you let your whole weight rest on it again. She sees Lily twice a month now, supervised at first by mutual agreement, and there is an awkwardness between them that wasn't there before, though Lily, blessedly, forgives faster and more completely than any adults I've ever known. I framed the letter, the real one, the one Daniel wrote and hid where only patience and love could find it, and hung it in Lily's room beside a new drawing she made a few weeks after everything settled. It's the same house, the same red door, the same crooked tree, but this time, instead of numbers on the door, she drew 3 figures standing in front of it, holding hands. "Is that us?" I asked. She said, "That's us and Daddy." She said matter of fact, the way children state truths adults spend years working up the courage to say. "He's still remembering me. I don't need the numbers anymore. I already found what he left." I think about the night I found her on her knees in the trash, searching for something she couldn't name. And I think about how far we've traveled since then, through fear, through betrayal, through a truth that had to be excavated one small, brutal piece at a time. My mother didn't understand what she was burning. Not really. Not the way that mattered. She saw scribbles. She saw clutter. She never once saw what I now understand so clearly. That love, when it's real, finds a way to leave a door unlocked even after the person who built it is gone. Lily still draws that house sometimes, not out of fear anymore, but out of choice. And every time she does, I sit beside her at the kitchen table and we color it together, the way her father once taught her to. And I let myself believe, fully and without guilt, that some part of him is still in the room with us when we do.